Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for coming back. So this video's topic is going to be all about how having an invisible illness or an invisible disability affects the way I'm treated, the way I see myself, and the reactions of strangers, or how I perceive myself to be thought of by strangers. So, what is an invisible illness? Shall we Google? An invisible illness is an umbrella term for any medical condition that isn't easily visible to others. Living with an invisible illness often leads to judgment and criticism because others believe you look fine from the outside and therefore you must be making it up. So I have chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis. So ME/CFS is a chronic illness that you have over long periods of time. It's characterised by exhaustion and pain and loads of other
symptoms.
So this is an invisible illness because there's no sign from the outside that you are sick. You don't have a broken leg or anything else. From the outside you look healthy, and that in itself can be a problem. Sometimes people who have invisible illnesses will be treated differently because they don't appear to be as sick or unwell or need as much help. And also people with invisible illnesses can sometimes be accused of faking their illness for attention or for extra support. And though there probably are some of those people out there, the majority of people with an invisible illness generally do need the help that they are receiving, if not more. I got diagnosed with ME when I was 16 years old, so I have a lot of experience of having an invisible illness, especially as a teenager. People very readily assume that young people, teenagers, young adults are healthy. It is a very common assumption that if you're young, you must be healthy. And that does quite often makes sense because as people get older they do generally develop more illnesses or issues with their body, but to say that because someone's young they must be healthy is problematic and really unhelpful. Lots of people who are open about their chronic illness talk about the fact that they've all received the comment of "you're too young to be disabled. You're too young to be chronically ill."
Then I proceeded to go on an unrelated tangent about how disability is represented in the media.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples of where my having a invisible illness affected me, so you can just see what I mean. The camera's still tilted, but I don't think I can fix it, so you can just be okay with it. Okay, I still haven't started talking about the things that this video is about. So the first thing that came up when me and my mum were discussing this topic was when you cross a road at a crossing, when a car stops for you so you can cross, the general societal expectation is that you will hurry up so you can get across quicker so you don't hold them up. Well, I can't always do that, and there was a point in time when I could never do that. The speed which I was walking was the fastest speed I could go. Like the slowest you've ever seen a human walk. So I would just keep walking at my world's slowest pace, and I felt so bad. I felt like I was causing them to be late to something they were going to, or that they'd be cross at me for being rude because they didn't know I couldn't go any faster, and I worried that they thought that I was just going slow to be annoying, and that made me feel really guilty. It really bothered me that I was unable to speed up and do the normal thing. Another time something like this happened was anytime there would be one seat available and my mum would say, you know, "Oh no, you sit in that chair." And I would. If there was a chair available, I was sitting in it, and you'd always get those looks of... This one time we were at a parents' evening and there was like waiting room chairs, so we were trying to see my psychology teacher or whatever was happening, and there were no chairs free, and I was stood up and a chair became available but just one, and my mum kind of went, you know, "Elinor, sit down," and I did. And the chair next to the one I sat down in was a parent that my mum knew, and the look of confusion of "why did you do that?" We always get this because I think what people expect is that the older person deserves the chair more. I mean, my mum, she's very fit, she does a lot of exercise, so she definitely doesn't need the chair, but the expectation is someone who's older to be given the chair, as I think it's like a more of a form of respect. And I was discussing this with my mum and she agreed that she always felt judged in that situation too. I always felt judged, that I should have said, no, mum, you sit down. I always felt like that's what people were expecting of me, which obviously I never did because I needed a seat. I needed to sit down. There's a seat, yes, I will sit down. I will sit in it. I always felt like people were judging me for, you know, being selfish and not offering her the chair. And she says she always felt like people were judging her for being an over indulgent parent that wouldn't take the seat for herself. I never thought about it from her point of view. I always just thought about it from mine. And it's true that we don't actually know what they were thinking. Those are just our projections. But you can see people watching or having facial expressions or whatever it is. You can see that. And there's nothing you can do about it because I needed to sit down and she didn't. It is what it is. But it's funny that we both have those memories because I didn't realise she was aware of it like I was. So there's this one time where I needed to get the flu jab. Now in the UK, the NHS provides a free flu jab for old people, very young, children and babies, I think, and anyone with a medical condition that means they're more susceptible. So I was put on the list of someone who was allowed a free flu jab, and that was great. Hooray! A flu jab is just a flu injection, a vaccination against the flu. Basically, the system is that they have like a couple of days where they just do flu vaccinations. There's a big queue. So there's old people, there's parents with pushchairs and babies and stuff, and there was me. I was just a random person because generally people my age don't have anything to worry about from the flu. So there was this long queue, and that's not ideal. I'm pretty bad at queues. It was a long queue. It went out of the doctor's surgery, it was so long. So by the time I got inside the building in this queue, I was tired. I really needed to sit down. So they just tied rope or string or whatever it was to chairs to mark off where the line went. So I saw a chair and I claimed it. So I was really pleased to have a chair, and then I started realising who else was in this room. This room was full of very old people, people with babies, and possibly also pregnant women. And I started to feel really self-conscious. These were all the groups of people you would give up a chair for, or you would if you were able-bodied. And I look able-bodied. So I was sat down and I realised that all these people who arguably deserved to see more than me, or arguably they didn't. You know, I don't know how they felt. I only know how I felt. And I knew I needed to sit down. Basically, the chairs were set at intervals, and every now and again the line would move forward, and I would try and move directly from the chair I was sitting in to the next chair along. And I felt very judged, and I don't know whether I was projecting my insecurity on them or I was accurate in how I felt, but I felt like people were thinking that I was being selfish. There was all these other people that deserved a chair more than me. So I did what I do in those situations. I really tried to make my pain visible, which you can't do. You can't make people see the pain you're in, but you can try to illustrate how you're feeling. And the way I do that is I make my walking look more painful. I make my walking stiffer, I make myself more limpy, I move slower. Saying it out loud, I feel guilty about it because I kind of am hamming it up, but no, I don't feel guilty about it. I just want the people around me to know that I need this. I do, I'm not making that up. If I'm taking a chair, I need it. If I felt really great, I would give up my chair, and I always used to do that. But now I don't have that ability to, though some people do need it more than me, and some people don't need it as much as me. But you can't measure that from the outside. You can't look at someone and know who needs it the most. I wanted to show that I was in pain, which I was. And I wanted to show that I was tired, which I was. I wanted them to know that I wasn't being selfish. I wanted them to know that I wasn't trying to take a seat from someone else who needed it. I needed it. I think it's tricky because I never want to make my illness seem worse than it is, because I think lots of people already think people with invisible illnesses make them up. But sometimes, I don't know, I feel the need to prove that I deserve this. I don't know whether that's okay. I know that is a coping mechanism and something that works for me. To reduce the likelihood of confrontation, you hear those stories where people come up to you and say, you're not disabled, you can't park there, or you're not disabled, you can't sit there, or whatever it is. And I I've never had that experience, but I am terrified of it. There was this one time we went to a theatre. We were seeing a musical. I'm not sure which one. I can't remember. It might have been Matilda. And it was fairly early on in my chronic illness, and I was dressed up when I go to the theatre, and I was wearing stilettos. Actually, I can show you the ones I was wearing. I was wearing these shoes. I love them. I've had these since before I was ill. As I got ill, my whole body started hurting more and more, and I continued to wear them like I used to, and it was a bad choice. They just made my whole body hurt. Obviously they made my feet hurt, but my knees and my shin bones, literally they just made all my bones hurt. I thought the theatre was a safe place to wear stilettos because you sit down. Then we got to the intermission and I decided to go to the toilet because that's kind of what the intermission's for. So I went to the toilet and the queue was so long, and I just looked at it and thought, I can't stand in there. I kind of just said like to my mum, like, I can't stand in this line, and she was like, okay, well, she's like, oh well, there's a disabled toilet right there. And I think there was someone in there at the time, but there was no queue. And I walked past this queue of so many people wearing shoes like this and had the audacity to go into the disabled toilet. Disabled people don't wear stilettos, or you'd think they don't. Yeah, so the door to the women's toilets was right next to the door to the disabled toilet, and the queue was coming out of the door and all down the corridor. So I walked past this queue of women waiting to go to the toilet. Out of the disabled toilet came someone in a wheelchair, and then I went in, and I felt so bad. I mean, I think partly I think I have imposter syndrome around the label disabled, and I feel like I'm not disabled enough. I don't deserve the help that disabled people benefit from. I went into this toilet and I was dreading coming out again. I was just thinking, oh, people are going to be so upset that I didn't want to wait in the queue, and I was just, you know, being a selfish teenager who couldn't be bothered and just went in, whatever. I felt so uncomfortable and judged and guilty and awful. And I had stilettos on, so it's kind of hard to show that walking's really difficult for you when you've got stilettos on, because clearly you've chosen to wear stilettos, so you're fine. I wasn't fine. I just really liked stilettos and I just made a bad choice. Shoe-wise, which I am prone to do. I've been doing it forever, and just since I was sick, it's just had much worse repercussions. And maybe the people in the queue didn't care, or maybe I don't know what they thought of me, but in my mind, what they thought of me wasn't good. If I'm realistic, if I'm honest, before I was ill, I would have judged someone I thought was able-bodied going into a disabled toilet. I would have thought that that was selfish behaviour, and I would have assumed that based on their physical appearance, they weren't disabled. So I understand if they were upset, I understand why. So another thing about my invisible illness is that I can't walk through airports. For a long time after I first got sick, we didn't go on any holiday because I couldn't handle them. And one of the reasons was the airport. Airports are massive and involve walking miles. And you're always at gate 50 million, and you have to walk 3 miles that way to get to a gate, which means by the time I'm on holiday, you know, by the time I'm on the plane, I feel like I'm dying, and I can't walk around an airport. There is a service within airports. I assume most airports have this. You can request a wheelchair that will take you from like the front door of the airport all the way to the door of the plane, and that has been a game changer. Airports are still quite a lot of energy for me, but there's so much better now. I can sit down, get in a wheelchair. So sometimes when you get a wheelchair from an airport, they just give you the wheelchair, but sometimes they will provide a person to push the wheelchair, which I don't really like, because I don't really like being pushed by a stranger, and I find it really anxiety provoking. And sometimes they walk really fast, and then my family members are somewhere behind me and I can't see them anymore, and I, really get panicked. But this one time, there was this one guy who was pushing me through this airport, and which is not my favourite thing anyway, but it's fine. And then we had to go in a lift to go up this very small flight of stairs, but the lift was really tiny, so no one could come with us. It was just me and that random guy. And as soon as we were in the elevator on my own, he goes, "So what's wrong with you?" And I told him because I can't handle confrontation, but what I really wish I'd said was, that's a very rude thing to ask someone. You shouldn't ask someone that, especially if you don't know them. Like, he had no idea what was wrong with me. You know, it could have been a very painful subject for me. By this time, I'd had chronic fatigue for a long time, so I was fine talking about it, but he didn't know that. It could have been when I was 16 and I couldn't speak about it to anyone. And I just thought, someone needs to train you not to ask what's wrong with people. That's just incredibly insensitive. Obviously, there are ways to find out what's going on with people, and it's not to go, so what's wrong with you, to a stranger. That was the only time someone was like that. I would highly recommend, if you have trouble with airports, I would highly recommend doing that. So at that point, I kind of wish I had a broken leg or something, so I could just like point at it rather than explaining, I have, you know, ME and this is what it is. If I was elderly, he wouldn't have asked that. If I had a broken leg, he wouldn't have asked that. If I looked disabled in any way, he wouldn't have asked that. I was taken aback. I don't know whether he was just making conversation because we were in an enclosed space, or if he waited so that we were alone for him to ask his rude question. I don't know which it was, but the memory of that has always bothered me, because in the moment I felt very uncomfortable and very like I had to answer. And I suppose I didn't. I suppose I could have just said, no, I don't want to tell you, but I can't do that to people. I can't say that type of thing. So I answered, and I pretty much wanted just to get away from him as soon as possible. And that's the only thing he did wrong. But so there's things like that about having an invisible illness where people will just flat out ask you what's wrong with you, or question whether you deserve what you are being given. And also it comes along with a lot of imposter syndrome where you question whether you deserve it yourself. And I think it also comes with a lot of projecting. I project a lot of, I think people are judging me, and I don't know whether they are. Obviously I can't read their minds, but I believe that they are. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, definitely like it and comment down below whether you have an invisible illness and have had any of these experiences. Also subscribe to my channel. I'm really hoping to hit 100 subscribers before the end of 2020. We're currently at 60 subscribers, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and definitely enjoy the bloopers that are coming up now. Bye bye. Boop, 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 boop. That's not my password. Tilted. You're tilted. I've got fake eyelashes on today and I feel very... This is my iPad, is what I film on.
So my iPad is on a very cheap stand, so then it's on a shoebox, and a record player that doesn't work, and a table.
To get there, oh.
Get there, ooh.
Is my hair cute?